Hi everyone, we will be continuing our integration part, and in last two sessions we have discussed the integration, how to expose your API, how to do the call out, and we have also tried to understand the concept of auth provider and name credentials. So essentially we were trying to do OAuth 2.0 authentication. Now, in this session, we will do a couple of callouts to external APIs, and we will try to dig deeper into the authentication and authorization in REST API. Okay, so let me share my screen and continue this. Okay. All right. So this was our API which we have exposed, and this is the org where we have exposed the API. Let me open the interview preparation org. I don't think we'll be needing this org because we will be doing call out. Call out from Salesforce means any other third party must have exposed their API. Okay, and we will call that API. So we will do the call out. The third party system must have exposed their API. They must have allowed us to do the call out. So in a way, they must have provided us all the necessary things they want us to provide in order to be able to secure a path to their API. Okay, they have to make sure that they allow us to hit that API. Okay, so whenever we do call out from Salesforce, it is not dependent on Salesforce about what security to basically enforce. It is the party which has exposed their API. They will decide what security they want to expose, what security they want to enforce, not expose, what security they want to enforce, and what type of authentication they want Salesforce to do for them. Okay, so that is what we will be trying to achieve. We will call the API endpoint of OpenAI. We will try to call the OpenAI. Okay, this is the backend of ChatGPT. You can say ChatGPT is working on these OpenAI's endpoints, and we will try to call one of the API. Okay, and we'll see if we are able to make connection or not. Okay, so there are various endpoint. If you go to the OpenAI platform.openai.com, there are various endpoints available, and they have given how do you make the request. You can see this is the request JSON, where in the authorization you will have to pass the OpenAI API key. So you need to pass an OpenAI API key, and then obviously you need to pass the endpoint. This is the endpoint of it. So this is the completion API, and content type will be JSON, and this will be the model. So you'll have to provide the model, and this is the message you want to. Okay, and there are a couple of optional parameter, and this is the response you may get. Okay, so this API documentation for any org is very important for you whenever you are doing the integration on your own. When you have a team, let's say you are integrating Salesforce with Workday, and you have a Workday team, then it is the responsibility of Workday team to give you all the API documentation, sample request, sample response, and also inform you about what kind of authentication they are expecting you to do. Okay. And let's say they provide the API key. So API key is one of the REST API authentication mechanism. We have also seen this when we connected the Salesforce to Salesforce, or we connected via session ID. You can also say that it was also an API key where you just need to pass that API key number along in the authentication header and along with the bearer, and then it should be able to make you the connection. So that API token will be confirmed on the destination org which has exposed their API. And if that API token is a recognized token which that system has provided, then that system will allow you to hit that API. So we have already done the API, integration via the API key, but that was just the Salesforce org. Now here we will try to hit another org, which is not Salesforce, which is a third party system. Okay. And then we will see if we are able to make a call out or not. So let me log in. Uh, mm, just a second, guys. I just want to make sure that. Hmm. All right. So now you can see this is the documentation. There are two tabs. One is API reference if you want to see the sample request, sample response, and everything. And if you just want to go through the documentation, these are the capabilities. So text generation is a capability. If you click on it, it will say that uh, it will basically the moment you write some text on it, it will complete that text or will give you more context about that text. Okay, so that is the text generation API. This is the API endpoint. It is also known as completion API. Similar to this, we have different other APIs, like you can see this one, image generation API. You will tell something about what kind of image you want, and it will generate an image for you. Okay. Similar to this, there is a sentiment analysis API. Okay. Uh, da, 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 da. There are a couple of sentiment analysis API which will tell what is the sentiment of a particular text which you have written. Okay, so we will try to call these APIs, and then we will be seeing if we are able to get the 200 response or not. Okay, and if you want to explore more about OpenAPI, go through this document and you will get to know a lot of information about these endpoints and how to call those endpoints. Okay, the best way to learn the API uh, is to go through the documentation of it and then see. Why I'm using Salesforce is because you guys are familiar with Salesforce, but otherwise the best way is to do it via Postman. Any third-party system call out you want to do, you can do it via Postman. You just need to provide the proper endpoint and whatever is written here. You can see, let's say if I go to the images endpoint, it will give you sample request and sample response. You can pass, or you in fact copy paste the same response and same request, and then you should be getting the similar kind of response. This is the endpoint. These are the request body fields you want to provide. So it kind of provides almost everything which you actually need to do the call out. Okay, but we will try to do it with the help of Salesforce. Okay. So that's where, but before that, you have to understand this. There is an API key. Okay, first you will have to create a new secret key in order to be able to connect, or in order to be able to allow other system to connect with you. So let's say you create a API, my test API. and you create a secret key. Now this secret key is nothing but your API token. Okay, you will have to copy it or whatever. It will remain here in your system. Okay, you can mark it as done. This is the first thing. The other thing is organization ID. Along with the API key, you will also have to provide the organization ID in order for the endpoint to be able to actually associate which organization is calling this. Okay, or this API token is associated with which organization. So these two are the major things I want you to know beforehand. Once we proceed, we will see how to do that. Now here in our Salesforce, we will go to the developer console. And I have done this in past, so that is why I just when the chat GPT was launched newly, I did this project to connect to their endpoint and see if we are able to do this or not. So that is why I thought that it will be a better idea to show the same thing to you guys. Okay, I'll call it Open API class, and we will try to do one call out first. Okay. Um, Let me public static void of fetch. See, there is an API which tells the sentiments of your words. So let's say you wrote something on the chat GPT, it will tell you what are your sentiments. Are you angry? Are you using abusive words? Those kind of sentiment analysis it does. Okay. So for that, it takes a string as input, whatever input you will be doing. Okay. Input param. And this can be public, guys. The person or the organization which is exposing their API, they have to make it global. But we can make it public and still we'll be able to do that because we are hitting their API. That API needs to be global. Okay, not our class. We can still be have public and pretty much will be able to do that. Okay, so don't worry about it. Now we have to do the call out. So simple call out we will do HTTP is equals to new HTTP. We have already seen this. We have created this in our org. So you guys already know that. Then we will create an instance of HTTP request class and we will call it HTTP request, new HTTP request. Okay. Now we have to set the endpoint. Okay. Request dot set endpoint. And here we'll have to find the sentiment analysis. Text generation, image generation, text to speech, vision, search. Hmm. Just give me a minute, guys. Huh? I have not checked it from very long, so there are many changes. Okay, let's let's use the generation API, or you can say let's use the generation API. Okay, let's use this endpoint. Let's rename it. Let's call it generate image, because I'm not able to find the endpoint for the sentiment analysis, but that is okay. See, even our aim is to hit at least one API of ChatGPT. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so instead of that, let's hit this endpoint. Okay, now you can see this is a post method. So we will hit the post API. We will set the method as post, and let's do that. Request dot set method is equals to post. And now I told you that in the header, we will have to pass the authorization, and we'll have to, in the authorization, we will have to pass the API token. So let's do that step, because that is the main step. Here we will have authorization, and in that we will have to pass as a bearer token. So bearer, and then we will have to copy the API key we have. So we already have it. Let's open that. Copy. I copied it on clipboard, but then again, this is our API key. Okay. And then we will have to, if you see image generation API, you will have to provide few things. Like in the header, you will have to, along with the API key, you will also have to pass the organization ID. And then in the header, you will have to, what do we say? Organization ID, and yeah, other thing is okay. Like that is just the content type. So let's also pass the organization ID. Okay, let's copy the header part, and here we will have to pass OpenAI organization, because that is it requires. Sure. And you can get all these information in your documentation. So don't worry about it. If you go through the documentation, it will obviously take some time for you to go through. But then once you do that, you will be able to get all these things. In the settings, you copy the org ID. Okay. So I think now our header is fine. I think we just need to pass the content type as JSON. And JSON. And now we just need to pass one thing, that is our input param, because that input param is the main thing. Based on this input param only, this Open API will generate the result for you. Okay. So first step will be like, this is just the string. We will have to convert it into the JSON. So we can do it like kind of JSON input they expect. If you see this expect the input in the JSON format, even in the image generation, if you go, and let's go to the API reference. So we will try to make it the way they want it. Okay. Let's do that, and then we should be able to get the response, right? Request body, what we have. This prompt is nothing but the input we are going to provide. Okay, let's see. Not worry. JSON input. And I will explain this. Don't worry, for all the people who are a bit uncomfortable with this. Don't worry. I will explain this in detail. Input. And then we have to give it a pattern. That will make it a JSON. Let's complete the code and then we will do the correct formatting. Okay. Now let's finish the request dot set body part. And in that we will just pass the JSON input. And then we will have to create the instance of HTTP response. Let's call it response, and then http.send, and we will send the request. Okay. System.debug response get body. Now let's fix that. Okay. And this will be the key side of it. And then on the value side of it, we will have to just write the input param. Okay, that's pretty much. What else we need to do is we will have to add this in the remote site setting as well. Can we avoid the repetition of header? See, we'll have to add two things. That is why I'm adding in the two. If you want to add it in the single, you can do that. But just to avoid confusion, that is why I have, because you'll have to pass these things in header. They expect you to pass these things in header. Okay. They, if you will test it via the chat, via the postman, you will see that you will have to pass multiple things in header. That is why we are adding it. Okay. So when it comes to doing the call out, it is not what we want to do. It is what other system wants you to do, or what other system expect us to do in order to be able to do the call out. Okay, let us just quickly add the remote site setting. When AI and point, save this. All right. So I think we are good now. We are passing the organization ID. We are passing the BRA token, and I think we should be good. Let's try to do the call out.
So we didn't have to pass the complete URL in that remote site setting. Just
No,
the portion of that will also work, right?
even if you try to put the whole URL, it will only take the main part of it. It will exclude the remaining thing. Okay.
Okay.
Let's do the call out and see if you are able to make this.
Sir, for before example, I think we have included, we have used Apex services, those things as well, right?
Sorry.
Like in our before example from Salesforce to Salesforce, so we have included Apex services slash like some other part as well.
That was Salesforce API, right? This is the chat GPT endpoint. They have given us the whole endpoint. And in our example, what we were doing was we were trying to do the call out to an endpoint which was a Salesforce endpoint. So in that case, you only created the URL mapping and you have to add the additional part on it because that's how Salesforce creates the endpoint. This is how ChatGPT has created their own endpoint. Okay. So if you want to understand it from the from the way we have written, there must be a class which has a URL mapping as generations, and then they have added these additional things on top of it. Okay, so that's how they generated their own endpoint. Okay, this is the chat GPT endpoint, not the Salesforce endpoint. So we will not add the Apex REST slash services in every endpoint. If
Yes.
the endpoint is a Salesforce endpoint, then we will do that. Otherwise, we need not to. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Let's see
Sir,
if we are able to do the call out first.
excuse me, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, in the Salesforce to Salesforce example, uh, you tell that to automate the process, we can use the auth provider
We will.
instead of the remote site setting.
Yes. Yes. Here also we can do that.
Oh,
Here also we can create name, credential, and auth provider. It's just that the authentication is happening via the API token. Okay, there is no client secret and client ID. So when we select what kind of authentication we will be doing, we will not be selecting Auth 2.0. We will be selecting API token. Okay.
okay.
And because this is something we are doing just to test if we are able to do call out or not, that is why we are just doing the via the remote site setting. In an actual project, even the API token, even the endpoint, you will not pass like this directly. You will either create name credential or even you will secure this via some other mechanism. Okay. You will not directly pass in the class. But we want to see if we are able to do call out or not. Okay. So that for that purpose, we want to send it. Okay. I think this will not work because OpenAPI also, when we use the generate image API, they also expect us to provide couple of other things like this. They want us to provide model, they want to provide the prompt, and they want to provide us the size and what else? Let's try that, okay? Don't worry. Uh, uh, yes, you got it. See, we have got the response, but this is error because we have used an input param, whereas this API expect us to pass these kind of param. So if I change this input param to prompt, because this is expecting us to provide prompt, and then let's see. Prompt. And then let's also provide the model. And model will be, model can be anything. Let's copy whatever is written here. And then let's also provide the size, right? Size and num image. Yeah, these are the optional parameter. The only required, or you can say the required parameter is prompt, and other are the optional parameter. But here I'm trying to tell you, if you'll have to provide the multiple parameters, how you're gonna do that. Okay. So let's also include the n. N basically tells you that how many images you want to get as a return. Okay. So now let us try to save this. And you need not to worry, these are all information is already available here. You just have to spend some time to go through the document, okay? And you should have that confidence that if we try to integrate Salesforce with any other third-party system, the process is not difficult. Process is easy. It's just that because people have to go through a lot of documentation, they feel that it is a difficult. That's it. Okay. Now, let us try to save this and resend this API call. Oh, okay. This has given us error, and that error is because they're saying you have reached the limit of number of callouts you can do for this. So essentially what they are trying to say is that these are not free anymore. You will have to have a billing on your account to be able to do that. Okay. So obviously we are not going to pay them for this. But one thing you can understand is that we were able to do the call out, and authentication and authorization was fine. That is why they were able to understand that billing is not correct or billing does not have any credit on it. So that's how you will do the call out. Okay. Now, instead of doing call out to this, let us do a call out to YouTube. Okay. Again, an open API. Let me open. Okay, now because our API endpoint for ChatGPT is not working, we are getting the billing limit because this is not a paid account and they have made it paid. Earlier it was free, so we were able to hit that. Let us try to hit the YouTube API. Okay. This is the YouTube developer guide if you want to go through. No, I don't want to do the weather map. I want to do logical APIs, guys, which has actually the security features enabled. Okay. So I will hit the list API of YouTube. We will hit this endpoint. And here, the good thing with the YouTube API is this, that you can even try this. So if we want to try this API, search API, and if we click on try, it will tell you. Here you can see there are two kind of security features enabled, Google Auth 2.2 and API key. Whichever you want to use, you can use. If you want to use Auth 2.2, that is also fine. But that means Google support both of these kind of security. Okay. Part is something which we want to search. Okay, so let me search the Salesforce and interviews, which is our YouTube. Okay. And here, just a second, let me search for this part. Okay, part is a parameter specify the okay. In the part, you just need to provide snippet. It's the value it expect. And in the queue, you have to provide the your input parameters. Salesforce and interviews. And if you search for it and enable both, that is fine. Here we need not provide any API key because we are just testing within the Salesforce. Sorry, within the YouTube. So it will give you 200 response. That means your hit was fine. It was able to search. This was able to find out my channel, Salesforce and interviews. It fetched the main name of this channel is this, the same description we have. It has provided a couple of images as well. And if I copy and paste it somewhere, you will see maybe an image from my channel. Yeah, this is the logo of my channel. So it was able to fetch these things from the endpoint. Okay. Now we will have to create an account there, console.developers.google.com. And here you will have to create an account, create it with the same email ID. And we want to get the authentication or API related information first. So for that, you will need to create a project. See, you'll have to connect Salesforce with YouTube or with Google. So Google will be something, this work will be done by something else in your real project. You will not be doing it. But in order to be able to understand the both of these things, we have to know how it works, right? So that is why we are creating a project in Google, and then that is how we will fetch the API. In a real project, you will get the API directly by the Google team. Okay, so you need not to go through this step. They will give you sample request, sample response, API endpoint, and everything. Okay. So let's create a sample project. Yes, Swapnil, go ahead.
Morning, sir. Yesterday I tried this for Google Maps. I was trying to do the navigation. But
I'm
they was asking for the payment,
sorry. Yesterday you were,
right? For the Google Maps integration,
yeah.
the
So it,
same way you're like creating the projects and all that. But at the end, they was asking for the payment as well.
so that might not be free, right?
Yeah, because they want access from the Google Cloud platform.
Yeah, that must be free. Must not be free. So see, that is why it is hard to explain the integration, because it is most of the time, if you want to integrate with the other system, it will not be free. Okay. And why will you pay for something which you are just trying to learn, right? So that is why it is difficult. You don't have
Yes,
any.
I was doing for the organization.
Your voice, I'm not able to understand, though. Can you repeat again?
I was doing it for my current project.
Uh-huh.
So I just talked with them, sir, this is the scenario because we want to integrate with a routing, Google Map routing.
So
So,
then they have to pay, right? If you are going to use the service, you will have.
so they just said, no, we will just find some another way. They said, it's okay.
Any API they decide to go for the obviously to test or something, they'll have to pay.
Right.
Once they'll pay, they will get access to those things, and then they
I
will.
said the same thing, but the reply I get is like, we will use the OpenAI, where we can face the routing. There is a lot more platforms, so we use the free access to AI. We will go through that. Thank you.
I don't know what. There are a couple of things I have to set in order to be able to generate the API key, but that's how we are going to do. Here you will get the API key and everything. Once you get the API key, you will use the same API key along with this endpoint, which we discussed here, and it will be able to fetch us the required things. So I think I'll be doing this call out tomorrow. I'll set the API.
In the library, we will get the APIs. In the library, yeah, below the
Yeah, we'll
search.
have to search for which we want, right?
Yes, yes.
Is YouTube. Type A version 3, what else?
Once we enable that, it shows the credentials.
Guys, you understand, right? Why it is difficult to teach integration is because you don't want to use free APIs because there is no authentication and authorization there. And if you want to use any paid API, then you will have to pay for it. And then also it is not 100% sure that you will be able to, like we were able to hit the API, yet we were not able to successfully do because the billing information. Earlier it was free, I was able to get all the responses the way we want. Okay. Let us copy it somewhere. And even I'm not sure 100% that this will work. Okay. I'm just taking a big leap of faith and will write another class. To do the call out to And this will be the API token. Okay, let's do this. It was a search API. This is just the get API. Okay. See, even if you just directly get APIs are something which you can directly do in the web because you need not to pass anything, but it will just say that it is not allowed because you are not passing any API key. Okay. So let us pass the, I don't think this is required now. Endpoint, uh, let us use this one. Yeah. Let's just save this. Now, because we are not passing any params, ideally we'll have to pass these two params, okay? Because this is required, okay? And if you go through the documentation, you will be able to see the full documentation here, okay? The sample requested response, do they provide? Yes. And so this is the main param, and this is a string parameter. This is basically your search term. The search term will determine what do you want to search. Okay. And I don't think there is any other thing you will have to provide. There is one. There are a couple of other things as well, like this is the channel ID. If I want to directly search for a channel, it will search for it directly. Otherwise, based on the search term, you can do that. Okay. Save search time. These are just the okay. So it does not require any request body because obviously this is a this is a get API. This does not require any body, and the search term and the param you can directly uh, pass in the header. I believe we should be able to do that in the header. Let's call it raw and see if it gives us anything or not. Let's add it to the remote site setting. You can see I will try to add the whole endpoint, okay? It will only take the main domain name. That's it, okay? First, as invalid authentication expected on to yeah. Okay, this is giving me error. Guys, I will do this tomorrow. I will fix all the backend related things which we require to do the call out, and then we will do the call out to this endpoint. But what I want you to understand is that it depends on, see here it is not dependent on Salesforce to provide what. It is dependent on what YouTube wants you to provide. Okay, we will fix it and we will see if it is working fine or not. So I will try to fix the authentication part in the backend, and then we will see if it is working or not. Okay. But try to go through whichever tool you want to connect to, try to go through their API documentation, and then we'll see if uh, that documentation has all the details which you require in order to do the call out or not. And if it has, then that is your best friend. From there only you will be able to do the call out. Okay. That's pretty much. We were not able to do much today, but that is fine. It's a part and parcel.
But I have one question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we have a standard APIs in Salesforce. Standard API in the sense if we want to retrieve the account, contact, or anything that the Salesforce has provided, the base URL plus a subject, then the services, and then we can directly access that object name. Using the object name, we can access those records.
100%.
So yeah. So for that one, what needs to be the setup in the Salesforce? So the
Just need
third
to
party will access the tool.
You just need to provide them the standard endpoint. Okay. You need to
Uh-huh.
create connected app for them, and then necessary security related measures, like on the connected app, you will get the client ID, client credentials, and everything.
Fine.
And then give that client a secret and client token to that third party system. And you will have to create a user for that system, so that like API user or whatever kind of permissions you want to give. And then on their system, they will have to make sure that they do provide client secret, client ID, and it will also require them to provide username and password for the first time when they first time try to authenticate with Salesforce. But here you need not to create any custom API, like you need not to create any custom
Web
website
services.
already written, and
Mm.
you just can give the endpoint, and that also you will be able to find easily in the Salesforce documentation. Like if you type Salesforce endpoint for account creation, it is already available. Give that endpoint, but you will have to create the connected app, so that you have to define the scope, grant type, and grant scope, what you want them to do with your system. Okay.
Yeah. And the user, whatever we have created for that one, the on the user object that we have one checkbox called the API enable. So is that fine only or any other permissions that we need to give to that particular user?
Now that we have integration user license type as well, we have another license called integration user only. So it depends
Understood.
on whether you want to use your standard Salesforce license or integration user license. Integration user license will only have one limitation, is that they'll not be able to access the UI. But I don't think they need to even. So I think you can use even the integration user API, or you create an API only profile and assign that profile to that user. The only difference is that API only profile user will be using the standard Salesforce license, which is costlier than the API integration license.
Okay, understood. So connected app is necessary for the standard API. So only the user will not do these things, is it?
Connected app, treat it as you are connecting another app who can access
Okay.
Salesforce. So what they can do once they access Salesforce, what will be they allowed to see, what will they not be allowed to see, that you can define in the connected app. When you select those grant permissions, you select the scope, right? What they can do, full access, API only access, or whatever access you want to give. You drag those things from left to right screen. That is where you define what they will be able to do with your system. Okay, and then not only this, there are a couple of additional features also available. So if I show you the connected app,
Mhm. I mean, like the connected app for the web services that we have written for that one, we are using it. But the for the standard API also, the connected app is
connected
required.
app is not connected app is basically you think of it is in a way that connected app is a way that by which other system will be able to connect to Salesforce. They have got the endpoint. The standard endpoint is already there, but that does not allow them to access that endpoint. Like they will not be able to go through your Salesforce walls unless you allow them to. And how will you allow them? By creating a connected app where you will the Auth 2.0 security features, client secret and client ID will be given to them. So API endpoint is there, but they will not be able to access your Salesforce without username, password, and those client secret and client credentials. Okay. So connected app is for the authentication and authorization, whereas the endpoint is to allow them to be able to create those accounts. Okay.
Understood. Yes.
And not only this, in the, let's say if I go to app manager, I create a new connected app. Once I enable the auth setting, these are the auth scopes I was talking about. What you want.
Can you share it again?
But
Can't see.
not only this, there are a couple of other things as well, like require secret for web server token. So what is web server token? What is refresh token flow? There are a lot of other inner things available. So inside the auth 2.0, there are multiple types of grant type. Okay, there are multiple flows available, like authorization code flow, which is also known as web server flow. There are username and password flow. There are refresh token flow. There are a client credential flow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
These flows, by default, it just checks these things, but it also gives you an option to check other things as well. And all these flows are different from each other. They do one thing or the other. I will try to explain as much as I can on this in the next session. But they are basically within Auth 2.0 itself, there are different flows available. Okay, there are, see, the Pixie flow available. There are web servers.
Please share the screen.
Sorry.
Please share the screen. I'm
Okay.
unable to see.
Sad. Sorry. Just a second. All right. So what I was trying to say is that the moment you go to the connected app and enable the auth settings, then it will, this is the scope you have on the left, and you want to select whatever you want to provide to that third party system, first thing. And within this OAuth settings, there are multiple grant type available, or you can say multiple flows available. By default, these flow will be enabled, and your third party system will be able to use these flow. Within Auth flow, there are multiple flows available within Auth 2.0, like web server flow, like Pixie flow, like client credential flow, refresh token flow, implicit flow, username and password flow. There are multiple flows available, and you can see it here. JWT token flow and token exchange flow, client credential flow, uh, refresh token flow. So multiple flows are available. Now it depends on you and your, if you want to check all those things. Okay. then the third party system who is doing call out to you will have option to use any of these. Okay, let's say there is a third party system who wants to call out to Salesforce, but they only support the token exchange flow. They do not support other flows. Then if you will uncheck it, then even after you give them everything, they will not be able to do the call out because they do not support all the other flow except the token exchange flow. So in that case, you will have to enable the token exchange flow so that they will be able to do call out. Okay, so these flow basically define how the authentication and authorization will be working. Okay, how web server flow works is different than how client and credential flow works. Okay, and I will try to explain as much as I can in this context, but use and try to understand is that there inside auth 2.0 there are multiple layers of different types of or different grant type available. Okay, and if you enable all, then it will be depending on your third party system which one they want to use and which one do they support. Okay, by default Salesforce, if you do not select anything, then it will be web server flow, which works in the backend, and then you will give them the client secret and client ID, and then authentication token will be generated, refresh token will be there, auth token will be there. I will explain these things in detail, but for now you understand there are multiple flows available inside auth 2.0 workspace. Okay. Sorry, I will not be taking any session on MuleSoft. That is way beyond the scope of this. Sorry. And I do not have any connect or anything. We have actually a MuleSoft team itself. So that is why we do not get to work much on MuleSoft.
Hey, hi Mohit.
Go ahead.
What is external credential?
What is external credential? I have also not created them yet. So when we go to the name credential, we get external credentials. Let's try to create a new one. I will come back to you on this. I have not created, not used it. So don't show. Consumer key and secret is an external key, but that we get in the connected app also, right? I will come back to you on this with definition along with practice. Okay, don't worry.
Hello, hi Mohit. Actually, in name credentials, in the right side there is an option new, and one other option is available like new legacy. What is it?
Yeah, that is what I'm sharing on screen, right? The external credential, right? You are able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So
In name, can you please click on name credential? And now in the right side there is a new option. The drop down there is a legacy option in the drop down. No. Right side of the new button, new legacy. What is it?
it will create a new name credential. Legacy, as in it will give you a screen which you get in the Salesforce Classic when you create a name credential. Okay, when you create a name credential from the Salesforce Classic screen, that is treated as a legacy name credential, or this is just a different way to create a name credential. This was the older way to create it. If you create it from the newer way, like from the classic screen, if you create the new name credential like this, then it will use this one. Okay, and then for that here you can use the external credential as well, and in the external credential you define what will be the security or other authorization will be. So if I show you this one, just a second. Shivangi. Here in the name credentials itself, you are using the authentication provider and other thing. If you go back to the name credential and create the first create an external credential, let's call it Shivang. Here you can define which authentication you want. Okay. And auth. See, here also you can see within the auth 2.2, you have different types of flow. Browser flow. This is nothing but the web server flow I was telling you. Client credential and client secret flow, JWT bearer flow, and client credential with JWT assertion flow. Different types of flow available. Let's select with the browser flow. And the scope you can define full, and then you selected the auth provider. Okay, so you can understand it. It's just a different way to do this. That's it. The traditional way is a bit different, and this way is a bit different. Now you created an external credential. You can now go and create a name credential from this screen, and then you can use your external credential you have created in the first step. So it is just a different way to do it. It will do the same thing. I was more comfortable in the classic screen because that's where I have created multiple times. So I did that. If you want to do it this way, you can also do it this way. Okay. Getting my point? If you go with the classic way, you will not get option to select the external credential here. Instead, you will get those options directly on the same screen to provide the auth provider and to select which type of flow you want to use. Okay. Getting my point?
Yes.
So that's how we do that. See, authentication protocol, you will get to choose directly here on this screen. Okay. And there you have selected these things in the external credential. So it's just a different way to do that. Okay. Getting my point? That is, in fact, is a better way to do because that gives you a better view, you can say. All right. We'll have to work a lot on fixing this YouTube endpoint and see if the API endpoint is working or not. But more or less, I understand. I feel that you should be able to understand the call out and how to explore the documentation of it, how to test the documentation of download Postman, guys. Postman is a better tool to do the testing first. We do not directly start writing code in the Salesforce. Before that, we go to Postman and see if the actual endpoints are working or not, and what will be the authentication and what will be the request parameter and everything. And then we do the call out. Then we start writing code in the Salesforce. Okay.
Sir, like just a doubt, like